Assalamualaikum and it's a very good day to all my friends. Did you know that our GDP has declined during COVID-19 pandemic? According to Ramanan in the Straits Times, Malaysia's GDP shrank by 5.6%, which is the biggest contraction happened since 1998 Asian financial crisis. Before we have a more discussion about it, let's learn about what is GDP. So what is GDP? GDP or Gross domestic product is a measure of the total value of production of all resident producing units of a country in a specified period before deducting allowances for consumption of fixed capital. GDP can be measured by using three approaches, namely production approach, expenditure approach, and income approach. GDP is important because it gives information about the size of the economy and how an economy is performing. The growth rate of real GDP is often used as an indicator of the general health of the economy. In broad terms, an increase in real GDP is interpreted as a sign that the economy is doing well. When the real GDP is growing strongly, employment is likely to be increasing as company hires more workers for their factories and people have more money in their pockets. When GDP is shrinking, as it did in many countries during the recent global economic crisis, employment often declines. In some cases, GDP may be growing but not fast enough to create a sufficient number of jobs for those seeking them. But real GDP growth does move in cycles over time. Economies are sometimes in periods of boom and sometimes in periods of slow growth and even recession. What are the relationship of GDP and unemployment? Unemployment is one of the top contributors that affecting GDP. Since COVID-19 hit worldwide, most of the workers got laid off, and this condition led to the increase in percentage of unemployment in a country, including Malaysia. Full employment is important in optimizing the national output. In Malaysia, it was stated that GDP growth will increase by 3.5% with 1% decrease in unemployment rate. Meanwhile, since the implement of MCO in Malaysia, the unemployment rate seems to be an increasing trend as illustrated by this chart from Department of Statistics Malaysia. As you can see, for the first 3 months of implementation of MCO, the unemployment rate increases drastically. This surely affected Malaysia's GDP. In April, it implies that the rate is significantly increased at a difference of 1.1% from the rate in March. Thus, it confirms that MCO truly gives a significant impact to unemployment, which then leads to lower GDP. What are things that happen if a country is having a low GDP? When GDP goes up, the economy is generally thought to be doing well. Meanwhile, weak growth signals that the economy is doing poorly. If GDP falls from one quarter to the next, then growth is negative. This often brings with a falling incomes, lower consumption, and job cuts. The economy is in recession when it has 2 consecutive quarters, which is 6 months of negative growth. When GDP growth is strong, firms hire more workers and can afford to pay higher salaries and wages, which leads to more spending by consumers on goods and services. Firms also have the confidence to invest more when economic growth is strong, and investment lays the foundation for economic growth in the future. When GDP growth is very low or the economy goes into recession, the opposite applies, which workers either be retrenched or paid lower wages or both, and firms are reluctant to invest. In conclusion, unemployment surely have both significant negative and positive impact on GDP. Therefore, government should take action in ensuring that GDP rate not fall to zero and negative figures, since it shows that the economic performance of a country. and it surely give back impact to others in the future. That is all from me. Thank you.